Hey, everybody. I am excited to have someone with me today who can talk more in depth about premium content and some of the things I talked about last week. Nora Sudduth, I think her nickname is Suds, is the co-founder of Hello Audio and a leading marketing strategist. She has helped businesses sell over $500 million worth of products and services online. She's got over 20 years of experience working with startups, all the way up to Fortune 500 companies. She is an expert in marketing positioning, messaging, offers, sales strategies, all these things. She's consulted on thousands of campaigns. She knows her stuff, and she's really great at this stuff. So what I want to talk with her about today is first her journey, how she's gotten to this point of founding Hello Audio, and her experience with podcasting. But I also want to talk about private podcasts, because that's really what Hello Audio can provide people, the option to release private podcasts. What are they? Why should people do it? What things has she seen work for people when they create private podcasts? So without further ado, here is Nora. Hey, Nora, how are you? Thank you for being on the show.
Hey, Danny. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, you have a sort of a storied history in all the things you've been involved in before you've gotten to Hello Audio. So I want to hear how you got to this point, maybe some of the companies you've been involved with, what you've done for them, and what got you to this point of now working with Hello Audio.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually came up through that more traditional path, climbing the corporate ladder. So got a handful of degrees, thought that, that path to success was going to be that corporate job. I worked with some really amazing companies, from startups to Fortune 500 companies. ExactTarget, before they sold to Salesforce, was one of the amazing companies here in Indianapolis that I had an opportunity to work with. Really just had a lot of fun helping companies grow, right? Exponential growth and all that look like. However, the corporate, job, they say 9 to 5. It's never 9 to 5. It's like 7 to 7, right? Let's just call it what it is. It didn't really facilitate the lifestyle and taking that school bus home that my kids really wanted at the time. And so I ended up retiring from corporate and started my own marketing agency, had a lot of success. Back then, I had started with WordPress. That was kind of what you did. Then came along ClickFunnels. They were brand new to the scene. Russell just started. Funnels were not as a widespread, common name that they are now, but started using ClickFunnels. Russell found out the success that I had been having, that we had helped our clients have with ClickFunnels. And he kind of tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, would you be willing to shut down your marketing agency and help us rebuild our certified partner program? And so I kind of was like, well, how do you say no to Russell Brunson and the opportunity to work with such an amazing, fast growth company? I did shut down the marketing agency, ended up working with Russell for, several years, built a number of 7-figure programs for them. And then since then, I've now helped sell over $500 million of stuff online. And I've helped build courses and certification programs that have generated several millions more. So that's kind of how I came this. But I would say, how did I come into Hello Audio? Actually, my two co-founders were also in the entrepreneurial space, Lindsay and Derek Padilla. They were helping folks with online courses as well. And so I ended up kind of chatting with them, helping them with the webinars, the webinar funnel that they had been working on to help kind of sell their program. And ended up talking, we shared a lot of similar values, one of which is helping people succeed and course completion rates. And I'm obsessed with client success. And so, coming from corporate, having very limited amounts of time, raising kids, being that working professional, and still being really interested in professional development. I did a lot of books on tape, right? I did a lot of, back in the day, they were cassette tapes and then they moved to CDs, right? Yes, I am that old. But that's how I learned, was a lot of audio-based learning. And it was fantastic because it leveraged my time. It fit into those pockets of the day where you could incorporate, more learning into your day-to-day. And with podcasts, the invention of podcasts, taking podcasts now to that new level, it's a natural fit for learning. And so talking with Derek and Lindsay, and they had this great idea to use private podcasts to create, essentially create a podcasted version of courses to help teachers, boost engagement and completion rates. And it was originally, Hello Audio was originally called Podcast Your Course. And I was like, oh, I'm in. Having a tech background, I have a computer science degree. I've worked with a lot of SaaS companies. It's like, I'm in. This is something I'm absolutely passionate about. And that's kind of how Hello Audio started.
Okay. That's a good long journey and circuitous, but it seems all fit together. I want to get your take because you've had a lot of success in the marketing realm, in marketing strategy and things like that. I want to get your take, your philosophy, and maybe your experience with content marketing in general. Being that the business you co-founded now is really about content marketing, but maybe even podcast more specifically. In this journey up to this point and getting into Hello Audio, how has content marketing and podcasting been important to you? How have you used it? And how do you think it benefits the companies that you've helped?
Absolutely. I specifically audio. So using content marketing with audio, I think is a game changer because, you've seen it too over the last several years. It's content is king, content is queen, call it whatever you want. It was like, just create more of it. Some people are really tired of creating content, especially when they're spending all this time creating content and it never gets consumed. Right. And so we have to take a look at that and be like, how many people are consuming all the email newsletters that you write, all the blog posts that you've written, all the things that you've spent all this time writing, creating this content. And if it's not being consumed, they're not taking the next step, the next action that content is meant for them to take. So we looked at that. And it was like, well, why are people not consuming content? And it's just a lot of times because it's just too hard. It's too difficult. And you think, okay, well, an email newsletter is too difficult. Yeah, kind of. For some people to remember to open that inbox and to spend hours. How many times do you really want to spend more hours sitting at this screen, right? There's, especially during the pandemic, and even post-pandemic, people want less screen time. And that's where using audio, specifically private podcasts, that keep your content gated, right? They're still private. Private podcasts mean that you get to control who gets access to it and for how long, right? It's not just available for the general public. People either have to opt in or purchase, that way you give access based on that. So it's individual, unique access links are tied to that email address. And that's what makes it so powerful, is not only that you're able to reach them in these pockets of time that they have, they're away from their screens, right? So now you're able to unlock all of those hours of the day where people are still consuming content. If you look at the millions, there's stats out there, of all the millions of people in the US, over 80% listen to audio content on their phone. Why are we not meeting people where they're already at? Just because, if you look at the number of hours that people listen to podcasts every week, it actually rivals the number of hours that people consume Netflix.
Yeah.
So it's like, why are we not using this as a communication channel, not just for what you think of as typical podcasts, like this is an amazing show, right? This is an amazing public podcast people can subscribe to and listen. But what if you're also able to use this as a communication vehicle to communicate other things like your email newsletter or your blog posts? And I think, beyond just reach and unlocking all those hours of the day, audio is intimate, right? If you look at it, there's scientific studies that other universities have done, and it's all about memorability and how audio really hits people. And while video is great, we're definitely not anti-video. Audio has been found to be the most memorable communication channel. It's like your personality comes across and you're in their ears. And it's a very intimate way to create better connections with your audience. And if you think about unless you're an amazing writer, it can be very challenging to have that emotion come off of the page in a blog post. But if the author reads it, it hits differently. And so you have both, the memorability, you have the connection piece, and then being able to reach them. And that's why audio with content marketing is an absolute game changer.
Well, yeah. And that was one of the things that I was actually going to ask you about. I often talk about podcasting in particular as the best form of content marketing because of that connection that you build, and it being a long-term investment where over 6 months, a year, 2 years, you're building up this body of work that builds trust with anyone who's listening to it, because they have that ability to start that relationship with you, to become friends with you, even though you may never meet that person. So you kind of answered the why is podcasting powerful? Why is it something that people gravitate to you? I'm curious. I want to ask you, as someone who's a co-founder of Hello Audio, and you've obviously thought about podcasts a lot. Just share what is one of your favorite podcasts, and what has your journey been like with that podcast, and why do you listen to that podcast?
I'm a serial podcast listener. I hop around a lot, but I think that's what makes podcasts so great, is because there are certain shows that I might listen to or see just the episode title catches my attention and I'll listen to it. There might be other shows where I'm not I might forget it for a couple of weeks as I'm hopping around. But to me, that's what makes podcasting so amazing, and being able to sample and be able to fit things into. I personally listen to more private podcasts than I do public podcasts right now. and a lot of that, well, you think about it too, like I paid for that content. Right. I want to listen to that content. And so what I've done too is I'll actually create feeds for my own personal consumption. So all the things that I may have wanted to, whether it was a coaching call with my coach that I want to replay that and then listen to it because there were some magical insights, I'll actually listen to those private podcasts and the contents more than I might listen to public podcasts at this point.
Yeah, and before we got started, I was telling you about the monetizing podcast course that I just released on LinkedIn Learning, and that was one of those elements that when I got into the talking about premium content area, was that besides access, besides exclusivity, paying for something or something being exclusive implies that it's almost better quality, that there's going to be something more. There's a reason that we pay a subscription for Netflix, like you were saying, in terms of some of the other content that we consume, or we pay for Disney Plus so that we get exclusive access or first access to this movie that's not out in theaters at all, or something like that. So I want to talk more now about Hello Audio, about private podcasts, about premium options. Why would a business, a personal brand, anyone who's creating a podcast or has audio or has a business, why would they choose to create private podcasts?
So I'm going to break this down into 3 reasons, 3 big categories. And actually, I can tie every single one to either top line or bottom line revenue. Which I think is really, really important for business owners to understand. So the first category for using private podcasts that probably most people think about is marketing, right? It's your content marketing. It's getting people in the door. It's replacing that stale PDF lead magnet with something that's going to maybe grab more attention. We think I talk about the PDF, for a lot of folks, you have really great PDF lead magnets and you've spent a lot of time on them. But what typically happens is that people download it and they're like, I'll get to that later. And then they never get to that later. Yeah. There's a graveyard of PDFs. I know I have one. I probably have multiples. Other people have them too. But with an audio companion, for example, maybe a guide that walks them through how to use that PDF, that shares stories with them about where people have been stuck or some great insights people have had with it. It takes that PDF to an entirely new level, and it really helps create that foundational relationship with that lead. So now we're talking about using audio to attract. So we're attracting with audio. That could be by creating voiceovers for your blog posts or reading your blog posts. We have folks. We actually have a copywriter, so an amazing writer who has a newsletter every Tuesday and I think Friday. And so she gives her audience the ability to listen to her newsletters instead, even though she's an amazing writer and people love reading her writing. She has increased her open rates and her engagement rates because that inbox is busy. So if you think about private podcasts, they're almost like the new inbox where you can actually get through in someone's attention. So lots of options on the marketing side. I'll give you a couple more examples really quick on the marketing with some numbers. So if you're doing like a webinar, so any launch, right? You're doing a webinar, you're doing product launch formula with Jeff Walker's stuff, you're doing a challenge. Challenges are still really big, or maybe even a workshop on the front end to your, whatever your paid offer is on the back end, or sometimes workshops or challenges can be paid too. Engagement rates are typically low, right? And they drop off if you're doing challenges. So we've seen people just add a private podcast to their launch material, whether it's their challenge, whether it's their workshop, whether it's their webinar content, whatever that launch content is, they've seen engagement rates go up by double digits. So even though we had someone run the exact same challenge for maybe, I don't know, I think it was ended up being 2 years. So over the course of 2 years, they ran the same challenge. Their numbers were around 10% conversions. So pretty consistent every single time. They ran added the private podcast to it. They saw conversions jump to 23%. And it's only because we're now making it it's not rocket science. It's just easier for people to consume the content. So they actually do. And when they consume your launch content is designed for people to buy and get them prepared to take that next step. And so they do. So lots of opportunity on the marketing side for you to be able to monetize. So attract and monetize with audio for sure on the marketing side. Does that, so any questions on that one?
Well, yeah. So let's get into actually maybe some specific stories, because like, as you were talking there, and you were talking about the copywriter who sends the email newsletter, I'm already thinking, I'm getting into the habit now where if someone sends me an email that's more than 2 paragraphs, I will respond with a Loom video. Like I'm not going to type out my answer. I'm not a writer. That's partly why I have a podcast anyways. There are some people who love to write, but writing is more of a process, and there's a revision and where I feel like I can talk more off the cuff. I have examples from colleagues. I mean, people who've actually been on this podcast. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Angie Trueblood. She's a podcast pitching expert. She's I'm participating in her 5 for 5 pitching challenge this week, actually. And part of that is private training videos that or private audio. I think she has a podcast feed as well that she gives us every day to help us through those steps and explain steps. Monica Froese, who is a digital products expert, she's done all the funnels, all the ideas, all the product launch formula, Jeff Walker stuff. And in some of her last launches, she's actually doubled up on the video webinar with podcast versions of the webinar, because people can then listen to it on the go. What are some other maybe specific examples where you've seen people use the platform creatively? Throw some ideas out there that maybe some of the listeners haven't seen yet. They're like, oh, this was really interesting, this person did.
Yes. So you talked about just creating podcasted versions of launch content. On the front end, on the marketing side, I've seen people that are traditional like booth marketers. So they go and they do a sponsorship and they have a booth. They might have an opt-in either on an iPad, or sometimes they just use a QR code and people scan that QR code. And now they've got their private podcast and they've got it in their ears as they're walking around the convention center. So that's a very interesting way to be able to touch people as well. The other thing I've seen people use private podcasts for that's really interesting, and we actually started this as well, is we use it we have a customer success story podcast. All it is, I could tell you how amazing Hello Audio it is, but who cares what I think? I'm obviously very biased as being a co-founder. I want you to hear it from people who use it. I want you to hear why they almost didn't buy it. I want you to hear their experience with it, because especially with tech, most people are going to think, oh, there's the ramp up time. Like I don't have time to, a new a tool in my tech stack, all that kind of stuff. I want you to hear how easy it is from our listeners. So we ended up, every episode is a new story from a specific listener, talking about how they used it. That's an amazing way to have social proof directly from the mouth of your users or your clients, depending on, what kind of business you have. And that podcast, I would say, is one of our most popular, most successful private podcasts, is people just sharing their story with our product. It's as simple as that. I think that those are really interesting ways. And client onboarding. So I know we're getting a little bit into that literally was just in my head, was like, it's huge. I could do this every time I onboard clients, and I could just be like, here's your podcast series to listen to. Yes, it gets a little bit more into delivery and fulfillment, but I'll tell you, you want to talk about tying. Yes, we think about marketing as monetizing audio. If you can increase your client success rates using audio by podcasting the course or having an amazing onboarding experience, success sells. the more, I mean, success, if you have client success rates that skyrocket, and we've had folks that just adding a private podcast, we have an agency that used private podcasts for their onboarding. So we had a Facebook ads agency. Facebook ads are complicated. Everyone kind of comes with baggage. They have preconceived notions of how they think Facebook ads work. By being able to kind of control the narrative and talk about their process and know what to expect, they helped not only their employees, because that's not fun when you're dealing with misaligned expectations with clients, but they help their employees deliver and they help their client success rates skyrocket as well. You could include, we've had private podcasts, we talked about podcasting your course. Client success rates skyrocket over 400%. And when people are more successful in your course or in your coaching program or with your agency, they'll stay longer or they'll buy more. So your lifetime value of that client clearly goes up. But I will say from an onboarding standpoint, even employees, we've seen people use private podcasts to onboard employees. And that obviously there's a big cost if you have a lot of turnover, right, with employees, but you're able to then slip a note from their managing director in there. You're able to, talk about company values. No one wants to read that stupid employee handbook, that PDF. No one's reading it. They're just scrolling to the bottom and signing it if you have them sign it. But if you're able to make that come to life in a private podcast, what a different experience that is for someone who's joining your team. So lots of really creative ways people are using it.
Definitely. I really appreciate you sharing all of those, because I think that is what really helps people, is the real world implications of these tools and how they can use them. And I know there are other options out there. There are other competitors. There's people who've been around for a long time and added these elements, and there's new things that are coming up all the time. But I hope from people being able to listen to you, they're hearing some of the philosophy behind Hello Audio and what you guys have done and how you've created a tool that they can use in multiple ways. Before we go, is there anything else you want to share? And then maybe just let people know how they can find out more about Hello Audio and where to go and all those types of details.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I will share, because not all private podcasts are created equal. So one thing I will share that we do that some of our competitors don't do, and I think we were the first ones to do it, is we use segmentation. So if you use email systems that have tags, sometimes you're tagging certain audience members, either as they're a buyer or a non-buyer. What we've done at Hello Audio is now everyone in your audience can be subscribed to the same feed, but you could actually use those tags to tailor the content that they hear. So with public podcasts, everyone hears the same content at the same time. Yeah. With private podcasts, we're giving people the ability to make the content even more relevant. So that might be dynamic content like an intro or an outro. If you have an event coming up, you want to advertise that event, a little clip on the front end or the back end of an episode to people who haven't yet bought a ticket. You can now do that with segmentation. So the people who already bought a ticket won't hear it. Same thing with slipping in your lead magnet. If you want to give like a promo code to people who aren't buyers, you can now tailor and slip episodes in. So it's conditional based on the tags that they have, which is something that no one else does. Cool. It's kind of mind blowing. And if you get really ninja, you can do a lot of cool stuff. Well, yeah,
I hear the funnel background coming into it's like all the things you would normally do with your funnel or you would do with your email list. You can also do it with your private podcast. That's really cool.
Which is super cool.
So where do we go to find out more?
You can find out more at helloaudio.fm. We actually have a 7-day trial. And unlike a lot of SaaS companies, we don't require a credit card. So we're trying to eliminate all the friction possible. So 7-day trial, no credit card required. Really, over 70% of our users get their first audio feed up within a day. So you don't take it from me that it's easy. Go try it for yourself. I think you'll be really happy with what you can do with it.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here. And thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.